Buster down the left field line. Connor Tate is going to round third. He will score. And rounding third is Blaylock. He will score. And the Dogs walk it off.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you are in the right place. It's
third down, Bryce Young's career. You need 10, play clock at 4. From the pocket, launching downfield, underthrown and intercepted. Kelee Ringo has an escort down the sidelines. All the way to the end zone, and Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
Hosted by Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams.
Georgia on the mountaintop. Demons be gone, and the drought is over. National champions at long last.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Classic City Sports, and as always, Jeremiah Stoddard, along with my best friend over here, Jonathan Williams. We are in a great mood today, as you can tell. The Dogs go back-to-back and repeat last year's national championship after going undefeated in the regular season and topping it off with a 15-0 total season to get that national championship trophy. That the intro, sounds so great, and they're finally able to do it, right? But now we sit back here today, and we're going, man, they did it again. They did that
two
thing
times in a row.
I mean, my God, so initial reaction for you, right? We were both in LA, so we sat there and we got to experience the environment. We got to kind of be in the moment at the same time. I know you were working in the media part, so it was a little different for you. You couldn't be yelling and screaming the way that I could, because I was definitely having a good old time myself. But for you, your immediate reaction to when you knew that game was over, right? We knew that game was over well before it was over. What was that first thought that went through your head? They're doing it.
Yeah. So, first off, shout out to myself. First football credential for the national title. So I got to go cover a freaking national title, which was awesome. That was amazing on its own. That was a whole other accomplishment aside from Georgia winning a national title. But I just remember sitting up there in the press box with Brooks, and halftime comes around, and we both just kind of look at each other like, or even before halftime, it was probably early second quarter.
Yeah,
and we just kind of looked at each other like, this is over. Like, but it was like 31-7 at one point, I want to say, and we're like, this is over. Like that is ball game. I remember Aaron Murray tweeted after the first drive. He said, that's ball game. After Georgia just cruised down the field, made it seem so easy, and they were just on cruise control offensively. TCU could not stop them. Georgia was just doing anything and everything they wanted to on both sides of the football. And so, essentially that game was over after the first drive, because it was like once you saw what Georgia just did to that defense, it was like, oh, this might get ugly. And then Georgia's defense just did their thing, only allowed one score, and it came off of a huge chunk play. And then, 3 turnovers later by the Horned Frogs, and Georgia wins by 50-plus points. So Dogs by 50 came true. It was the most dominant game in national title history. There's a reason why that game was the least viewed national championship since like 1990, I want to say. It was a slaughter. It was a murder. It was a crime scene. It was everything. The fact that Georgia players were eating chicken wings on the sidelines in the middle of the game tells you everything you need to know about how that game went. Just unreal. But the fact that all those players got to, like, all the players that are leaving and all the players that are going to the draft and whatnot, the fact that they get to end their career as Bulldogs on a moment like that, a game where stress-free, themselves got to really indulge in that moment. Like Stetson Bennett getting to come off the field after the timeout. The band gets to play, the stadium gets to light up, SoFi Stadium, and they get to give Stetson that final send-off. That's just such a special moment.
So
something
nice.
that
oh my God.
So like for Stetson getting to have that moment in a national title, that's how it should have been. That's what Stetson deserved from the jump. He deserved to have that type of send-off, and on the biggest stage in all of college football. It was just amazing. And I think all Georgia fans were happy to have a stress-free environment watching that football game. I see Colonel in the comments literally just said it. Literally the most stress-free UGA game I've ever watched.
Absolutely.
And that's nice to have in a national title if you're a fan, because especially after what the Ohio State game gave you, to where for 3 hours. You were just on the edge of your seat, biting your nails, doing whatever. That was just such a special moment. It captivated the season off perfectly, if you ask me.
Yeah, 100%. And like the first thing I'll comment on is the send off that they did for Stetson was I think that was top tier by Kirby right there because it gave him, like you said, the moment he deserved from the get go. He deserved that. We're talking about a fan base at Georgia that hasn't really been the most receptive of him throughout his career as a starting quarterback. And honestly, even in the past like 2 months, you still had a lot of people that were doubting him and saying that he wasn't as good as he really was. And then he gets into the playoffs and throws for almost 400 yards against Ohio State, 4 touchdowns and a pick in that game. And all of a sudden, everybody looks at him and is going, all right, you know what? That was a pretty dang good game, pretty good performance when everything mattered. You needed a touchdown to win that game, and he got you a touchdown to win that game. Like you needed every bit of it in 72 yards. He got every bit of it for you to get you on the board. And I think that was like a ceiling moment in Georgia history for him. I think that moment right there last week was what really locked it in for a lot of people going, man, this he deserves what everybody's talked about for a long time. And it's time for a lot of people to stop hating on him. And then he goes out there this week and with 3 minutes and 25 seconds left in the game, or 13 minutes and 25 seconds left in the game, he goes out there and gets the curtain call while up by 40 points at the time or whatever it was. I don't remember. I think we scored 2 more touchdowns at least after that, so I can't remember. But at that point, like all the fans get to go crazy. They get to send him off the right way. Georgia gets to light up the fourth quarter in the stadium at that point in time because they didn't get to do it as soon as the fourth quarter hit. And so it just kind of made it perfect moment for him to walk off that field. And I think every Georgia fan at this point, I mess with my brother a lot and I text him because he was one that was always messing with saying that he didn't like Stetson for the past couple of years. And I text him the next day after the game and I said, hey, you get your Stetson jersey yet? And he said, man, I got a whole Stetson shrine now. I mean, like everybody has shifted. Like he had to prove everybody wrong, basically, and he did. He's done every bit of it. So getting to see him have that walk off the field was such a surreal moment for me and you in the stands and everybody else. And I can't imagine how good that felt for him and how much Kirby and him enjoyed that as well. But yeah, as far as the game, I mean, it was from the very beginning of the game. I literally sat there and the first touchdown was scored. Georgia drove down the field, and it was the easiest thing. Like it just felt like they cut a hot butter knife through butter. You know what I mean? Like just straight through it. And I literally said, man, that was too easy. And I vocalized, I said, that's too easy. The lady sitting next to me didn't exactly like that too much because she was a TCU fan. And so she kind of mocked, oh, too easy. And she was like, maybe our guys are just nervous. They haven't really played in big games like that. So no, I said, no, I'm not trying to be rude, but then like as the game went on, I probably got a little bit more obnoxious throughout all of it. But from the get-go, like you said, like he tweeted out saying that, the game's over from the first drive. It felt from that first drive, it felt like we were going to be able to do whatever we wanted to do. And it turned out that that's exactly what Georgia, that's how the game went the rest of the way. I mean, it was exactly what Georgia wanted to do from the get-go. And it was just a surreal moment as a Georgia fan. Like Colonel said, it didn't have to feel like you were concerned about the game. I saw them play last week. You saw TCU play last week against Michigan, and they looked pretty good. Yeah, Michigan gave them a lot of turnovers and points, but Georgia could turn the ball over. They hadn't done so great in the turnover margin throughout the entire season. So 1 or 2 turnovers that go the other way, and all of a sudden you feel like there could be a game. But Georgia just never let them in it. I mean, never let them breathe. It felt like it was just a cakewalk, which is crazy for a national championship game.
Yeah, Stoddard himself was deep in the Crown and Gingers by the time game kicked off. So he got a little rowdy in the stands while I was taking care of business up top.
I was having a good time.
It was like one thing that just stood out to me. There's 2 things that really stood out to me. One, being on the field after the game, just watching Stetson weave his way through the crowd. I watched him hug Mama Smart after the game, and just seeing the joy on not only Stetson's face, but the joy on Miss Smart's face, knowing that Stetson Bennett just won another national title. Like, she's obviously going to be happy for her husband, of course, the fact that he just accomplished that, but you could tell that she was just happy for him as well, and just was so proud of him for overcoming everything, overcoming every single obstacle, not listening to the haters, and just staying the course throughout everything. And that to me was a really cool moment to watch, to see that he had everybody behind him on that team, all the way from Kirby Smart to his wife and probably his kid too, Kirby Smart's son as well. I'm sure he had Stetson's full support. He was in Kirby Smart's locker room in tears because Stetson Bennett was leaving. That Kirby Smart told that story after the game. He was like, my son was not happy. Andrew was in my own locker room bawling his eyes out because he just realized that Stetson was leaving. Like that's a cool moment to know that like Stetson is just a good guy. He's all around good person. He's a great player for Georgia. But another moment that stood out to me was Kirby told a story about after last year's national title, obviously big celebrations. Everybody's having a good time. But eventually there came a point in time where Stetson and Kirby Smart and some coaches had to sit down and talk about what his future was going to look like. And he said Stetson told him, like, everybody's saying that I need to ride off into the sunset after bringing Georgia a national title. And I just need to stay on the high and not come back and just take that high moment and let it be done and close the book and let that be what my story at the University of Georgia was. And he just was like, that's not me. He's like, I want to go back and win another national title. That's what I want to do. And Kirby Smart said, well, then let's go do it. Like you and I, let's go do it. Let's go win another national title. And just like all of that to come to fruition, to go back to back, to be the first team in college football playoff history to go back to back and repeat as champions, to be the first Georgia quarterback to ever win 2 national titles. That's special. So special. And it couldn't have happened, in my opinion, to a better quarterback or even a better player in Georgia history. It was just such a poetic ending to everything.
Yeah, and let's talk about Stetson for a minute, because we sat here, you and I, for the past like 2 seasons at this point, sat here with like our swords drawn and just absolutely defending the guy from day one. Like, I mean, as soon as it got to where like, well, what about JT Daniels? Is he back? Well, should he be healthy? And we immediately were like, I don't know, guys. Like, we'll see what happens if he comes back. If he can come back, well, they got to make that decision. But right now, Stetson's doing great. He's made a couple mistakes here and there, but he's playing well and he's a good quarterback. And then he ends up winning the job the rest of the way, wins the national championship, and decides to come back. And we sit here again and going, and I had people literally tell me, somebody asked me, goes, hey, who's going to be the starting quarterback for Georgia in 2022? And he said, don't say Stetson. I was like, it's Stetson. And he was like, man, I don't know if I can take another year of Stetson at quarterback. And I was like, man, I'm telling you, the dude's good. Okay. I mean, he's a good quarterback. I was like, we will be in good hands the rest of the year. So I felt like we had to defend him for so long, like to the point where we probably pissed people off because we kept on and kept on and kept on talking about it. We finally had a point where you and I looked at each other and said, all right, no more Stetson talk for a few weeks. Like we're not going to allow ourselves to talk about Stetson for a couple of weeks. And to see him fully transition the rest of the way and go off the way that he did. I mean, prior to the season starting, you came on this show and you said Stetson Bennett, your bold take for the season was Stetson Bennett is going to break Aaron Murray's single season passing record. And not only did he break that record,
4,000 yards too.
Yeah, he eclipsed that 4,000 yard mark. He threw for a total of 4,100 and some change. Total yards was like 4,330 or something like that, I think, with including his rushing yards. 37 total touchdowns on the year, and probably the best. I mean, it was the best performance from a quarterback that Georgia's ever had statistically. Now, he may not have thrown as many touchdowns as some other people have in the past. Like Aaron Murray threw for almost 40, I think, one year. So that, but he still had total touchdowns because you got to count his rushing touchdowns, in my opinion. One of the most prolific careers as a quarterback at Georgia once it's all said and done. And like I said, now everybody, everyone should say, hey, let's build the statue for the guy. So from your standpoint, how good was it for you to see like it finally come to fruition the way that we were looking at it the whole time? Like we could see it happening. We saw the writing on the wall. Like how good did it like feel to say, hey, now he's finally getting the spotlight he deserves?
I don't know that I've ever gone to bat for a player like I have Stetson Bennett. A lot of people know that I was in the trenches for Matt Ryan throughout his entire career at Atlanta. And I was still to this day will defend that man till the day I die. I've even been on record saying that I would be willing to use my last dying breath to defend Matt Ryan in his case to be in the Hall of Fame, because that's just who I was. And I was a big believer in Matt Ryan. I was a big fan of Matt Ryan, still am. But there was just something about Stetson and the things that people would say about him. And I just never understood it, like I get it in 2020 a little bit, that's not the exact ideal place for Georgia to be. Georgia that year, I mean, 8-2 is what they went, I believe, or maybe 9 games or something like that after the bowl game. That's not ideal. That's not ideal for Georgia, but it was just like for him to stay the course still. I mean, we know the story. I can repeat it over and over for everybody. And it was the fact that, one, he delivered a national title for you, and then he does it again. It's just, like I said, he deserves everything. He deserves anything and everything he wants now. He deserved to have that type of ending career. He deserves nothing but love at this point from anybody and everybody. I mean, it's gotten so ridiculous at this point, Stoddard, that for the last 5 weeks, the only thing people could say about Stetson Bennett was the fact that he's 25 years old. I mean, really? That's where we're digging? That's the point where we're reaching about Stetson Bennett so much.
They started because they could no longer talk about his physical abilities to the point where they had to say, well, yeah, I mean, the dude's older than everybody else, so he's physically got more talent than everybody else like that, and took it away from him, even though there's players in the league right now like Hendon Hooker, who everybody loved. Well, he's 24, only a couple months younger.
He's 3 months younger than Stetson.
Yeah, so I mean, at this point, they just had to find something that was wrong with Stetson Bennett. They had to pick and pry to find something that was wrong with him.
Yeah, and I almost fired off this tweet the other day, and I decided to, but I'll say it on here, is that the goalpost moving that has occurred with Stetson Bennett haters has just been impeccable to watch almost. Not even impeccable constant, because that's almost be complimenting them, but it's just laughable. That's the way I'll put it. It's laughable because, it started off with Stetson Bennett is not going to be a successful quarterback at the University of Georgia. And then it became Stetson Bennett cannot lead University of Georgia to a national title. Then after the national title, it was, well, Georgia won in spite of Stetson Bennett. He's not the guy that won them football games. And then 6 games into this year, it just starts becoming like, he's still not elite. He lacks arm strength, blah, 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 anything and everything, grasping at straws. And now it's, well, Stetson Bennett's not going to get drafted. And now that Stetson Bennett is getting these draft praise from NFL scouts, so much so that some even said that if he was 6'4", he'd be the number 1 overall pick. So it's like, it's ever changing. Now it's, oh, well, he's not going to pan out in the NFL. Well, you know what? You also said that he wasn't going to pan out in college football. So if you want to keep hating on the kid, if you want to keep hating on this dude and keep on down, that's probably fine with Stetson, and that's fine with me, because all he's ever done in his 3 playing years at the University of Georgia is he's proven every single person wrong every single time. So if you're still doubting on him, if you're still hating on him, you were never going to be a believer in Stetson Bennett from the jump. You were never meant to to actually give Stetson Bennett the respect. You were never going to in the first place. If you can't now, you were never going to. So that's the end. That's the end of it. That's the end of the story. At this point, that's what it is. You're just a hater at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, at this point, you just are choosing to dislike the guy because you've just, that's the hill you're going to die on, and you refuse to change your opinion. And that's okay. If that's the case, then I'm not going to sit here and waste any breath on you anymore. Like, it is what it is. Because if he hasn't done enough on the field to absolutely change your mind, then there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do for you on that. And one other thing that's really important about Stetson Bennett that I think a lot of people didn't realize or give him credit for during the time period that he was at UGA, and in the past couple of years, was he won that locker room over. The guys wanted him at quarterback. Even last year with JT Daniels there, he was their quarterback. Nolan Smith came out and publicly said, Stetson's my quarterback. A couple of times, you saw a few people say that in front of the media, showing their support for the guy. And that's something that actually Aaron Murray talked about last night on the Top Dog Talk with Harrison's podcast. Shouts to him in the comments right now. He was on there, and he was talking about the same kind of thing. It was like, that's important. If you can sit there and have buy-in from the other 10 guys on offense, especially, to play at a higher level because they want to play for you, that they want to take it to the next step because of you, then that goes a long way. And that translates to performance on the field. And then especially if you have your defense on the other side that wants to play for you, like, they're going to help you out a lot as well and get that ball back in your hands for you. So I think that was a huge thing for me.
Like, that story about Stetson goes even further back than just these 3 years. I remember, I think it was before the Ohio State game, they were interviewing Lorenzo Carter, and they were kind of asking him about Georgia, Ohio State, Georgia being the playoff. Lorenzo Carter had been there with Georgia, and they asked him about Stetson, and he goes, I knew back in 2017 that Stetson Bennett was going to be a dude. He said, I remember him coming onto scout team right before the Rose Bowl, and he was like, he just made play after play after play after play. And he said, I knew from that moment on that he even said Stetson Bennett was my guy at that point, is what he said. Stetson Bennett was my guy at that point.
He did.
And Lorenzo Carter, I mean, Stetson was on the scout team. Stetson Bennett wasn't getting any meaningful snaps at that time, but Lorenzo Carter saw it in that short time span where Stetson was actually getting some run with the team. And so it extends way back then. So not only do you have current people on the roster that bought into Stetson, but you also have past players that played 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, that bought into Stetson Bennett and believed in Stetson Bennett, and he made them believers in him. That's not something you can coach.
And it's funny because think back to that time period, right? And what he's talking about was the bowl practices leading into the Rose Bowl against Oklahoma. And the reason he was running so much on scout team was he was helping prepare them for Baker Mayfield that season. Well, it's funny because he was able to emulate Baker Mayfield so well. Baker Mayfield's a shorter quarterback, doesn't exactly have the most insane arm talent out there, but he was just a gamer and he could win games. He could make extra plays with his feet and do more than other people could. And I mean, look at what he did with his career. He's been in the NFL. He's still starting games right now with the Rams. I know there's been some injury stuff and he's bounced around the league a little bit, but he had a stint for a few years with the Browns as a starter, won plenty of awards in his career at this point. So the difference is Stetson might be slightly shorter than him, but at the end of the day, everyone compared him to Baker Mayfield back then. He's still a same type of player as Baker Mayfield today, which means he's capable of making an NFL run of some sort. And I'm not saying that he goes out there and is a starter, but I think that he gets drafted and then he makes a NFL roster through rookie camps and stuff like that, and he's a backup quarterback that eventually, when a starter goes down, he'll get a chance to play a game. And maybe he could do something with it because that's what he's done in the past in his career is when he gets that opportunity, he takes grasp to it and does not let go. So I think that's something that he could do again in his career. And I wouldn't be surprised if he stays in the NFL for a while. And once again, I'm not saying he's going to go out there and blow the world away and be a starting quarterback in the NFL for 10 years or something like that. But I think he's a gamer and that stuff translates on the field. And when even if it is where they're going, hey, he makes us better in practice, they will want him on the team for that. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, it translates over into the NFL as well. And so I wouldn't sign him off. I think Aaron Murray last night, he said that he thought Stetson would be about a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. That's what he said he could do.
Yeah,
and just to remind everybody, Aaron Murray was a 5th round draft pick.
I mean, yeah, there's been reports of people saying, like, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised with how high Stetson Bennett goes in the draft because he's going to run a good 40 time. He's got a better arm than anyone will ever give him credit for. He's an athlete. Whether he may not look like the best athlete on the field, but he is one of the better athletes on the field. Regardless of what I say, he's a gamer. He wins games. He's smart, has a really high football IQ. And even like you said, even if he's not actually playing on Sundays and whatnot, that there's still value in having a quarterback that can kind of guide another quarterback that may not be as highly like cerebrally attached to football as Stetson Bennett is, where he can kind of guide the starter and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Maybe we should go here, look at this here, blah, 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 help him make decisions, kind of see him break down tape a little bit. Stetson has that part of the game, and that's valuable to have on a roster. I think a lot of teams will be willing to give him a 3rd string spot on their depth chart if that's what he can bring. He could be a guy on the sidelines that helps relay plays out and can communicate to the other quarterback. There's a lot of value in that, and that's all you need. If you can bring value to a football team, then you have your spot in the NFL, and you just need 6 years. That's all you need. To get invested into the NFL, all you need is 6 years. And if Stetson Bennett can do 6 years, then that's what he'll get, and I think he absolutely can make 6 years.
It's very possible for him. Well, let's jump back to the actual game itself because we got off on a little tangent because you and I, we love to talk about Stetson, as I mentioned earlier. We have to. We gotta do it. And I feel like this was like a moment for us to actually sit here and go, we were right about this thing the whole time. We get to say that we told you so kind of thing, which is dumb, but it does feel good at the end of the day as well. But look, one thing that we talked about last week after the Ohio State game, or before the Ohio State game, we sat here and we said, hey, we can't sit here and just pick on Brock Bowers the entire game. They're not going to let you do that. So somebody else has to beat him. And all of a sudden, Arian Smith and them stepped up and did that kind of stuff, right? Well, this week we sat here and talked about it prior to the game, and I'm pretty sure I said, all right, this week you can feed Bowers all you want to. He's going to be able to get open all day long, and the guy definitely did it. I mean, he had 7 catches, 152 yards, and a touchdown on the day, and he probably could have had more, but, we started taking everybody out and with 13 minutes left in the game.
I remember sitting up in the press box, and you know me, I'm always looking at stats. I'm always glancing at them. I'm always figuring out what can I tweet, what can I say, blah, blah, blah. That's my avenue. That's my lane, and I stay in my lane. But I've done a pretty good job at making a way in that lane. I had the Stetson Bennett article prepped and everything, and I'm looking at the stats, and I was like, dang. it's halftime and Brock Bowers has 100+ yards. And I was like, let me check something real quick. And I go onto his stats reference page and I nudge Brooks and I'm like, he's like 140 yards away from 1,000 yards in a season. And I went ahead and I'll go ahead and tell you, I already had the article prepped up for Brock Bowers to push 1,000 yards before the game was over. And I'm sitting up there telling Brooks, I'm like, just feed him. Throw it to him every play from now on. Like, the game is in hand. Like, you're going to win this football game. Just keep to him at this point. Get him those 1,000 yards for the love of God. Finally let someone become a 1,000-yard receiver in Georgia history, first time since Terrence Edwards. I was like, please just keep feeding him. And I think he got 1 more touches after that. But he did get a 40-yard gain. And I was like, all right, need 1 or 2 more, and he's got it. And then he just never got it. But, he came close. So maybe next year, he took a step up from last year. Maybe next year, if they get in the same position, he can finally get those 1,000 yards. But, yeah, it was an incredible game from Brock Bowers. It was an incredible game from Ladd McConkey. I remember it was like 4th drive of the game. Ladd McConkey basically scored 6 points by himself. First play, they hit him for like 25 yards. And then I believe they do another end-around play or something like that with him. He picks up 10 more. And then there was a run play for 6 yards with Kenny McIntosh. And then it was like a 40-yard bomb to Ladd McConkey wide open in the end zone. I was like, have a drive, 84. You just scored 6 points by yourself, basically. So many good plays and then the fact that Branson Robinson got to score 2 touchdowns in the national title. He had a couple really good runs.
Crazy.
Especially one of his touchdown runs ran through like 4 people. It was just the epitome of like, y'all boys don't belong on the field with us.
He looked like he should have been tackled at the 5-yard line at least on that play and then just continue. I thought he was down. I almost started looking away from the play. I was like, oh, crap, he's still going. I mean, it just shows you how powerful – and that's still going up against their starting defense. And, yeah, I understand at this point it's like a 50-point game almost, or a 40-point game before he started scoring his touchdowns. And, yeah, I get that they may not be really into it, but at the same time, he's a great player. And I think we're going to get to see him really break out next year when he starts getting a lot more reps, as you see guys like Kenny go to the NFL this year. I assume he hasn't officially announced yet, but I assume Kenny's going to the NFL. I think Kendall's coming back as from everything that I've seen. So we'll still have Kendall Milton next year. It'll be interesting to see how that running back room shakes out after, the next few weeks here and spring ball and stuff like that. But Branson Robinson, he looked really, really good in the national championship. One thing that stood out to me in the past couple of games that I've seen was Oscar Delp, though. He came in to play for Darnell Washington the week before, and then this week, he got to get on the field again because it was a blowout and stuff like that. What I'm wondering is, it's going to be a duo situation with him and Brock Bowers next season. That's the next guy up to really run it. Is he really a hand-in-the-dirt kind of guy? Is he going to be able to complement Brock Bowers the same way that Darnell Washington was? Because I don't know if he's a hand-in-the-dirt type of guy, and that's what Brock Bowers really needs to go next to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but also, too, like, I don't know, but like Brock Bowers was never a hand-in-the-dirt type of player either, but Brock Bowers eventually learned to block. He went through those freshman growing pains of learning how to do that, how to handle himself out on the edge. And so, like, no, all these tight ends that you're getting right now, like, we were out there at the All-American Bowl watching Pierce Spurlin play, and, like, we know, like, that's the next guy coming in. This next guy. Definitely not a hand-in-the-dirt guy. He told us himself that he's never done that before. So, yeah. All of these guys that you're recruiting, these Brock Bowers, these Oscar Delps, these Pierce Spurlins, these Deuce Robinsons, those guys don't have their hand in the dirt in high school football because they're going to be anywhere else just making plays because that's what they do best, especially at the high school level. But it's something that they can learn. It's something that Todd Hartley has shown that he can develop his guys into doing. And it's something you got to do as a Georgia Bulldog. If you're going to play football at the University of Georgia, you got to learn to block. Whether you're at the X wide receiver, the Y, whoever, you got to learn how to block. It's part of your job, and they understand that. So he'll get it figured out one way or another. But I think he held his own pretty well in the college football playoff game against Ohio State. He looked pretty solid as a blocker out there. And I think, just through another spring, through summer workouts and whatnot, he'll get it figured out. Oscar Delp is a really talented football player. He's got all the traits. But what I will say is it will be interesting to see how they use those two moving forward with Todd Monken. I'm interested to see what kind of sets he's got in his bag of tricks that he always seems to pull out, because this is different, because Darnell Washington was a unicorn, something that we really have never seen before. The fact that he's 6'7", 260 pounds, can put his hand in the dirt and block his dude tail end off like a tackle, or he can also go out into the passing lanes and just make big catches and never get tackled. But now you got two guys they're kind of the same mold tight end wise. Obviously, they may not be on the same talent level because we're saying that Brock Bowers is the best tight end in college football. So it'd be ignorant to say
He's
a little bit
definitely
that
that
Oscar
guy right
Delp
now,
is
yeah.
automatically on that level. But you got two guys that kind of are very similar build wise. So maybe you get some sets where they're both out wide. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what 12 personnel looks like next year because Georgia's probably going to stick with it. If I had to assume, you don't recruit multiple tight ends like that if you're not going to use them. And by God, you're going to use both of those guys.
It's just going to be interesting to see who ends up playing that more traditional end of line kind of guy because somebody's got to do it, right? And it's definitely not going to be Brock Bowers next year because Brock Bowers, like you said, I think he ended up with 942. So he was 58 yards away from 1,000. He's not going to be on the end of the line that often because he's so easily used in other ways. And you'd be taken away from him by doing that. So it'll be interesting to see who actually puts their hand in the dirt most of the time. And speaking of Darnell Washington being a unicorn, you remember like after last season or in the middle of last season, how many people came out saying that he needed to just play left tackle. He could go make a lot of playing left tackle or something like that because he's so big and he's strong and all that kind of stuff. Well, that somebody that y'all thought should be a left tackle ended up having just under 500 yards receiving on the year. I mean, he played very well in the pass game and then at the line of scrimmage blocking his butt off for people. And it's just been a wonderful thing to watch. I'm definitely going to miss Darnell Washington. When Brock Bowers leaves, it's going to be just very upsetting for the fan base because, we're selfish and we want him for more than 3 years, but there's no way he stays for more than 3 years when you're a guy like that. I mean, he's a top overall pick almost, at this point. So, it was what it was to see him play. Watch him leave is going to be sad, but it'll be okay. But on the game, back to it as well, how well did that defense play? I mean, how crazy good was this defense this week?
I was just about to say I wanted to touch on another moment. It has to do with the defense, but yeah, I'll kind of go ahead and dive into how the defense played. Javon Bullard, first off, holy cow, just a playmaker, just kind of one of those guys that you just put on the football field. It's like, go play football. Like we don't really have that's all you got to do. Go sack the quarterback if you want to. Go make an interception or two if you want to. Just go play football. Wherever the ball is, I said it before the national title, I said wherever the ball is, Javon Bullard is going to find his way to make a play on it. And that's what he did throughout that entire game. Christopher Smith, of course, going to miss that guy being on the field. He made his own plays. The defense in general, even all the way down to the second and third string guys, Bear Alexander's in there making plays. Just anybody and everybody. I think Jalen Walker ended up having himself a sack or almost a sack. So guys down the depth chart, proving that this roster is still very promising. There's a lot of talent still on that roster. The defense played amazing. Like I said, they gave up that one chunk play that ended up resulting in a touchdown. Then after that, nothing shook out for TCU. There was no momentum going for them, and Georgia was just suffocating them from the jump. They left them for dead in LA. I don't even know that TCU's offense is still alive after that game. But I think just like how it was poetic for Stetson Bennett's ending, it also was for Nolan Smith. And I know he didn't get to play. And I know that every single Georgia fan out there, coaches, anybody, would have loved to have seen Nolan Smith be on that football field in pads and get to see him celebrate a national title that way. But what stuck out to me, and it's another story that Kirby Smart told after the game, he said, Nolan Smith, when he found out that his season was over, after he found out that about his pectoral tear, he said, I think I'm going to step away from the football team and just go focus on the NFL draft. And Kirby Smart said, if you do that, it'll be the biggest mistake of your life. I guarantee it. So he said, if that's what you want to go do it. But just know that I think if you do that, it's going to be the biggest mistake of your life. He persuades him to stick around with the team. Forever. And he turns into the team's biggest cheerleader. At one point, he was rocking a Brock Bowers jersey. At another point, he was rocking a Stetson Bennett jersey. He was the biggest cheerleader on the sidelines. A lot of people credit him for the Ohio State win because he kept them locked in and motivated throughout the entirety of the game, just clapping it up on the sideline, saying, like, we're good, boys. We're good. We're right where we want to be. We're all right. And he kept motivating them. And that's what a leader does. And that's exactly what he was. So the fact that he also gets to leave this university with 2 national championship rings, another beautiful ending to an incredible story. A DGD, the epitome of it. Nolan Smith had an incredible career, a guy that came back for another season. It was just I was happy to see him being able to celebrate on the sidelines and on the football field after the game, to know that he got to have his type of send off in that way as well.
Yeah, it was really fun to see him get that. He seems so happy. Like you said, it's crazy to even think that he was saying, "Hey Kirby, I might just go." I think the emotions run high
Mhm.
after something like that, and you're going, "Man, I decided to come back for my senior year, and I don't even get to play. So now I should probably just focus on what I need to be doing for myself on it." And then I think Kirby was right. I think he would have regretted it. I think it would have been something that he would have missed the brotherhood and the environment that he got to be in for that last year. Nolan Smith is still expected to be a high draft pick this year, so I think he's going to end up having the type of career in the NFL that he wants to once it's all said and done, anyways. So it was nice for him to be out there helping his defense off the field in different ways and stuff like that as well. But this defense overall, like you were talking about a minute ago, they got that one touchdown, and it was honestly on a miscommunication, blown coverage between Javon Bullard and Keely Ringo. It looked like Bullard was supposed to have the outside receiver on it when they crossed, and he didn't go with them. He tried to chase him down afterwards. It was too late. Is what it is. Didn't let them have anything after that. When I tell you that they only had 9 first downs in the entire game compared to Georgia having 32. Georgia had 32 first downs compared to TCU's 9. TCU was 2 for 11 on third downs. I mean, just absolutely suffocated them. They had less than 200 yards of total offense in the game, 188 yards of total offense. Max Duggan ended with 150 yards passing in the game. I mean,
Negative
dude, that
38
is
rushing yards.
negative 38 rushing yards, and a total 152 yards passing. I mean, that is next level smothering a defense. We sat here last week. This is something we were definitely missing on. We were wrong on, was Max Duggan is going to go out there and make some plays with his legs today, or on Monday, and that he would get you a couple times. It'll be okay. Let him gash you for 10, 15 yards one or two times. It'll be okay. You'll survive it. You can't let him get you a bunch, but he'll get you a couple times. Man, that was the biggest thing we could have ever been wrong about. I mean, the dude, like you said, negative 38 yards rushing on the game and still only threw for 152. Absolutely gave him nothing to do. And this guy was a Heisman finalist. I mean, he couldn't do anything.
I've been trying to be polite to TCU during this show because incredible story themselves. The fact that they
turned around from a 4-8 team, weren't they?
Yeah, they were 4-8 last season, and then Sonny Dykes comes in his first year as a head coach and brings them all the way to a national title, which they deserve to be in.
That's impressive.
If you're saying that TCU didn't deserve to be there, they did. They beat Michigan, and everybody was saying that that's who they wanted to play Georgia because they thought that'd be the best matchup. So TCU earned their way into that national title game. I think that just really puts into perspective of how good Georgia was. It's like, it was. It was like watching a high school team go up against a college team, and those TCU players I don't think they were ready. And something I noticed leading up to the game, and something that me and Brooks talked about leading up to the game, being in the press conferences leading up to the game and watching their demeanor throughout the week was like, TCU is weirdly giving off vibes of like, we're just happy to be here. We're happy to be in LA. We're happy to be in this position. And Kirby Smart in Georgia, it's work. We're here on a business trip. We're here to get something done. We're here to take care of business, blah, 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 blah. And TCU is just a team's like, yeah, we're just happy to be here. And part of me wants to say it's because they flipped on that film. They turned on that Georgia film and those coaches were like, I don't know, man. I don't know how much of a chance we have in this one. So we'll just keep the morale up all the way up until the game, and then the season will be done with and whatnot. But you still have to be feeling good if you're a TCU fan. You got Max Duggan coming back. You got Sonny Dykes still. You got some portal entries coming into there. So you still got to be feeling good about what you have and what you have going. I mean, the Big 12 is the Big 12. And I think TCU is just going to do just fine again next year in the Big 12. They'll be all right. You lose your number one wide receiver, who's going to be probably the first receiver taken in the draft. So that's about it. But you get some nice entries. You still got most of your roster. So they still have to be feeling good, but they're probably hoping and praying that they don't have to confront Georgia again. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think they don't want to see anything to do with Georgia for a long time after this one. No, it was funny because you say that about the TCU team looking like that, and I had some fans. There was one guy, he had a few drinks before the game, and he walked up to me and a couple other Georgia fans that were sitting there hanging out, and he was like, y'all came all this way just to get your butt beat, or like making a joke about like, y'all don't really think you have a chance, right? Or something like that. And he was like, nah, I'm just kidding. He was like, he basically came, after making the joke to us, he came back and goes, man, we're literally just happy to be here. He said, we don't think we have a chance to win this game. I mean, we really don't. Like, he was like, we're not winning this game, but we're just excited to be here. Like the fact that we were able to come to LA and do this. Like, and I respect that, because once again, we're talking about a team that was 4-8 last year. You don't like
They haven't won
that
a
is
national title since
massive.
1938.
I mean,
So,
the
yeah.
fact that they were there is something to be proud of. So TCU fans and TCU players, they should definitely hold their heads up and say, hey, we did something that only 2 people got to do. We got to go play in a national championship game this year. We got to beat Michigan to get there. So we proved that we deserve to be in the playoffs. That's the part that's also really funny because, like you were mentioning a minute ago, everyone's starting talking about how TCU shouldn't have been there. TCU shouldn't have been there. It should have been somebody else. Bama would have played better. Tennessee would have played better. All this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Those teams lost multiple games. They don't get their shot. And guess what? TCU got their shot. They beat a playoff team. They won a game. They deserved to be there. You cannot say they didn't deserve to be there when they win a playoff game.
They beat a team
If
that
they
beat
hadn't
Ohio
won
State.
one, yeah, they did. They beat the team that beat Ohio State by 22 in Ohio. So that is something that showed that they were supposed to be there. Now, whether or not another team might have played Georgia a little bit better, that's possible. It is possible. It doesn't matter. They still deserve to be there. It doesn't matter if Bama would have only lost by 20 points in that game. It doesn't matter if Tennessee would have lost by 20 points or something like that. It doesn't matter because y'all didn't earn the spot to get there. They did what they needed to do to get to that spot, and they deserved their chance. They were able to prove that they needed to be in the playoffs by winning and beating Michigan. So if I was a TCU fan, yeah, I'd feel pretty bad about losing by 58 because that sucks. Like, it really does. But at the end of the day, you got to play in a national championship when everybody else wanted to be there, and you've earned your spot to get there. So there's something to be proud of as a TCU fan, something to hold your head up. And they have a lot of potential moving forward as well in the Big 12 and all the stuff that they, like you were talking about a minute ago, they have the opportunity to be somebody in the mix for the next few years as well. Sonny Dykes has done a fantastic job turning that roster around in just one single season. So I'm kind of excited to see what they're able to do in the Big 12 the rest of the way, the next couple of years myself. But I mean, at the end of the day, this Georgia team was just special. I think this offense was something that, we only dreamed about having for so long, for so many years under Kirby Smart. And prior to Kirby Smart, sitting here going, hey, are we a team that could ever score 40 points a game? I don't know. But I mean, when you go out there and you can put up 65 in a national championship game, you've proven to everybody. And I think that they've tried not to do that throughout the season. But I think it was the final game of the season. It was like, all right, let's show everybody what we can do. Let's show them why we are who we are. We're going to go up and put 45 or 65 points up in this game. And yeah, we're going to beat the crap out of this team. We're going to let our backups somebody tweeted this out and they were like, man, Georgia's third string is up 21-0 over TCU right now. And it's because they were. I mean, they were out there still scoring 3 touchdowns late in the game. It's crazy.
Absolutely. They started the season like that. They started that season against Oregon by putting on a butt whooping, kind of like saying, hey, we're still here. Don't think that we had this drop-off that y'all talked about all offseason. And then they ended it the same way, just by putting down a beating and saying, like, we're not going anywhere. This is still UGA. We are the kings of college football. This is the new example of what everybody hopes to be in college football. It's the University of Georgia, and that's who everybody's trying to knock down. The king is here. Kane Kirby is here, and he's sticking around for a long time. And, you got anything to say, Stoddard, else about the game?
Honestly, I think that's pretty good for me.
Okay. I was just making sure. I didn't want to start kind of signing off the show and not giving you a chance, but just want to give you guys a quick few things before we head out. Number one, that's end of college football season. 2022 to 2023 is in the books. So now we're back in that state of mind where we're just waiting for college football to arrive. But good news for you is that we're still going to be bringing you content throughout the entire offseason. We don't stop. We keep bringing you guys stuff. We'll be able to talk about the NFL draft coming up, all that stuff. We'll hit portal talk and transfers and all that stuff a little later. I know that that's kind of a hot topic right now, but we had to cover the national championship first, and that had to be its own episode. But don't worry, all that conversation is coming up for you guys soon. So if that's what you're looking for, come in for the next couple of episodes. I'm sure that'll be another topic that we discuss very thoroughly. Kind of break down everything about roster movement and how Georgia's looking going into this next year. Still another exciting year that we get to build up and talk about. Back-to-back champions, of course, that's going to be brought up a lot. And then also, a huge thank you to all of you guys. This was an incredible season, not only for the University of Georgia, but for us. We grew a lot as a channel. We gained a lot of subscribers. We've gotten to see a lot of new faces down in the chat for us. And you guys' support means a lot to us. It's why we're able to continue to do this. You guys are a big reason why we do this every single week and why we show up with enthusiasm that we do, or at least the enthusiasm that I think we do. So just a big shout out to you guys. Hopefully you guys stick around during the off season, because like I said, we're going to be bringing a lot more content.
Plenty of stuff for y'all.
King of the Hill is going to be making a big time comeback, of course, during this time. It started last year, and we'll be doing plenty more.
Talking season's got to come back too. Talking season's got to come back. So while you're out there, if you see fans from other fan bases talking all kinds of junk that doesn't make any sense, you want to say that's a cold take, DM us on Twitter. We got the handles right here. Send them to us, and we will talk about it. That's one of my favorite segments during the off season is talking season and getting to just make fun of other fan bases. Always a good time.
It'll be weird not having to defend Stetson Bennett during the talking season portion of this show now, but also kind of a relief. But guys, again, thank you for all the support. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we continue to grow the way we have over these past couple months, and we'll be building up for the 2023 season. Maybe Georgia goes for a repeat. They're looking pretty good, but subscribe, do all that good stuff for your boys. Yeah, any Tennessee fan is definitely making an appearance on talking season. But do all that stuff for us. Help us contribute in your way by liking and subscribing if you haven't already. And Stoddard, you can close us out for the 2022 season.
As always, fellas, keep it classy in the Classic City. Go Dogs. Hope everybody has fun in Athens tomorrow for the parade. We will be out there ourselves, so if you are, just hit us up as well. Yeah, we'll make sure we meet up or something like that. But enjoy the parade. Keep it classy in the Classic City. We will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Classic City Sports. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Classic City Sports crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at the Stodfather, to Jonathan at Dr._J Will, and make sure to follow at Classic City Pod for show updates. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime,
2 simple words which express the sentiments of the entire Bulldog Nation.